Simon stayed where he was, a small brown image concealed by the leaves. Even if he shut his eyes, the sow's head still remained like an after-image. The half-shut eyes were dim with the infinite cynicism of adult life. They assured Simon that everything was a bad business. "I know that." Simon discovered that he had spoken aloud. He opened his eyes quickly, and there was the head grinning amusedly in the strange daylight, ignoring the flies, the spilled guts, even ignoring the indignity of being spiked on a stick. He looked away, licking his dry lips. A gift for the beast. Might not the beast come for it? The head, he thought, appeared to agree with him. "Run away," said the head silently. "Go back to the others." "It was a joke, really. Why should you bother? You were just wrong, that's all. A little headache, something you ate, perhaps. Go back, child," said the head silently. Simon looked up, feeling the weight of his wet hair, and gazed at the sky. Up there, for once, were clouds, great bulging towers that sprouted away over the island, gray and cream and copper-colored. The clouds were sitting on the land. They squeezed, produced moment by moment this close, tormenting heat. Even the butterflies deserted the open space where the obscene thing grinned and dripped. Simon lowered his head, carefully keeping his eyes shut, then sheltered them with his hand. There were no shadows under the trees, but everywhere a pearly stillness, so that what was real seemed elusive and without definition. The pile of guts was a black blob of flies that buzzed like a saw. After a while, these flies found Simon. Gorged, they alighted by his funnels of sweat and drank. They tickled under his nostrils and played leapfrog on his thighs. They were black and iridescent green, without number, and in front of Simon the lord of the flies hung on his stick and grinned. At last Simon gave up, and looked back, saw the white teeth and dim eyes, the blood, and his gaze was held by that ancient, inescapable recognition. In Simon's right temple a pulse began to beat on the brain. Ralph and Piggy lay in the sand, gazing at the fire and idly flicking pebbles into its smokeless heart. "That branch is gone. Where's Sam and Eric?" "We ought to get some more wood. We're out of green branches." Ralph sighed and stood up. There were no shadows under the palms on that platform, only the strange light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. High up among the bulging clouds, the thunder went off like a gun. "We're going to get buckets of rain." "What about the fire?" Ralph trotted into the forest and returned with a wide spray of green, which he dumped on the fire. The branch crackled, the leaves curled, and yellow smoke expanded. Piggy made an aimless little pattern in the sand with his fingers. "Trouble is, we haven't got enough people for a fire. You got to treat Sam and Eric as one turn. They do everything together." "Of course." "Well, that isn't fair. Don't you see? They ought to do 2 turns." Ralph considered this and understood. He was vexed to find out how little he thought like a grown-up and sighed again. The island was getting worse and worse. Piggy looked at the fire. "You'll want another green branch soon." Ralph rolled over. "Piggy, what are we going to do?" "Just have to get on without 'em." "But the fire?" He frowned at the black and white mess in which lay the unburnt ends of branches. He tried to formulate. "I'm scared." He saw Piggy look up and blundered on. "Not of the beast. I mean, I'm scared of that too. But nobody else understands about the fire. If someone threw you a rope when you were drowning, if a doctor said, 'Take this, because if you don't take it, you'll die,' you would, wouldn't you? I mean, of course I would. Can't they see? Can't they understand? Without the smoke signal, we'll die here. Look at that." A wave of heated air trembled above the ashes, but without a trace of smoke. "We can't keep one fire going. And they don't care. And what's more," he looked intensely into Piggy's streaming face, "what's more, I don't, sometimes. Supposing I got like the others, not caring. What would become of us?" Piggy took off his glasses, deeply troubled. "I don't know, Ralph. We just got to go on, that's all. That's what grown-ups would do." Ralph, having begun the business of unburdening himself, continued. "Piggy, what's wrong?" Piggy looked at him in astonishment. "Do you mean the—" "No, not it. I mean, what makes things break up like they do?" Piggy rubbed his glasses slowly and thought. When he understood how far Ralph had gone toward accepting him, he flushed pinkly with pride. "I don't know, Ralph. I expect it's him." "Jack?" "Jack." A taboo was evolving around that word, too. Ralph nodded solemnly. "Yes," he said, "I suppose it must be." The forest near them burst into uproar. Demonic figures with faces of white and red and green rushed out howling, so that the little ones fled screaming. Out of the corner of his eye, Ralph saw Piggy running. 2 figures rushed at the fire, and he prepared to defend himself, but they grabbed half-burnt branches and raced away along the beach. The 3 others stood still, watching Ralph, and he saw that the tallest of them, stark naked save for paint and a belt, was Jack. Ralph had his breath back and spoke. "Well?" Jack ignored him. lifted his spear and began to shout. "Listen, all of you. Me and my hunters, we're living along the beach by a flat rock. We hunt and feast and have fun. If you want to join my tribe, come and see us. Perhaps I'll let you join, perhaps not." He paused and looked round. He was safe from shame or self-consciousness behind the mask of his paint, and could look at each of them in turn. Ralph was kneeling by the remains of the fire like a sprinter at his mark, and his face was half hidden by hair and smut. Sam and Eric peered together round a palm tree at the edge of the forest. A little one howled, creased in crimson, by the bathing pool, and Piggy stood on the platform, the white conch gripped in his hands. "Tonight we're having a feast. We've killed a pig, and we've got meat. You can come and eat with us, if you like." Up in the cloud canyons, the thunder boomed again. Jack and the two anonymous savages with him swayed, looking up, and then recovered. The little one went on howling. Jack was waiting for something. He whispered urgently to the others. "Go on, now." The two savages murmured. Jack spoke sharply. "Go on." The two savages looked at each other, raised their spears together, and spoke in turn. "The chief has spoken." Then the three of them turned and trotted away. Presently Ralph rose to his feet, looking at the place where the savages had vanished. Sam and Eric came, talking in an odd whisper. "I thought it was, and I was scared." Piggy stood above them on the platform, still holding the conch. "That was Jack and Maurice and Robert," said Ralph. "Aren't they having fun?" "I thought I was going to have asthma." Sucks to your asthma." When I saw Jack, I was sure he'd go for the conch. Can't think why." The group of boys looked at the white shell with affectionate respect. Piggy placed it in Ralph's hand, and the little one, seeing the familiar symbol, started to come back. "Not here." He turned toward the platform, feeling the need for ritual. First went Ralph, the white conch cradled, then Piggy, very grave, then the twins, then the little ones, and the others. "Sit down, all of you. They raided us for fire. They're having fun." But Ralph was puzzled by the shudder that flickered in his brain. There was something he wanted to say. Then the shudder had come down. But they were regarding him gravely, not yet troubled by any doubts about his sufficiency. Ralph pushed this idiot hair out of his eyes and looked at Piggy. "But the fire, of course, the fire!" He started to laugh, and stopped and became fluent instead. "The fire's the most important thing. Without the fire we can't be rescued. I'd like to put on war paint and be a savage, but we must keep the fire burning. The fire is the most important thing on the island, because he paused again, and the silence became full of doubt and wonder. Piggy whispered urgently, "Rescue. Oh, yes, without the fire we can't be rescued, so we must stay by the fire and make smoke." When he stopped, no one said anything. After the many brilliant speeches that had been made on this very spot, Ralph's remarks seemed lame, even to the little ones. At last Bill held out his hands for the conch. "Now we can't have the fire up there, because we can't have the fire up there. We need more people to keep it going. Let's go to this feast and tell them the fire's hard on the rest of us, and the hunting and all that. Being savages, I mean. It must be jolly good fun." Sam and Eric took the conch. "That must be fun, like Bill says. And he's invited us. To a feast. Meat. Crackling. I could do with some meat." Ralph held up his hand. "Why shouldn't we get our own meat?" The twins looked at each other. Bill answered, "We don't want to go into the jungle." Ralph grimaced. "He, goes. He's a hunter. They're all hunters. That's different." No one spoke for a moment. Then Piggy muttered to the sand, "Meat." The little ones sat, solemnly thinking of meat and dribbling. Overhead, the cannon boomed again, and the dry palm fronds clattered in sudden gust of hot wind. "You are a silly little boy," said the Lord of the Flies. "Just an ignorant, silly little boy." He's talking to Simon. Simon moved his swollen tongue, but said nothing. "Don't you agree?" said the Lord of the Flies. "Aren't you just a silly little boy?" Simon answered him in the same silent voice. "Well then," said the Lord of the Flies, "you'd better run off and play with the others. They think you're batty. You don't want Ralph to think you're batty, do you? You like Ralph a lot, don't you? And Piggy? And Jack?" Simon's head was tilted slightly up. His eyes could not break away, and the Lord of the Flies hung in space before him. "What are you doing out here all alone? Aren't you afraid of me?" Simon shook. "There isn't anyone to help you, only me, and I'm the beast." Simon's mouth labored, brought forth audible words. "Pig's head on a stick." "Fancy thinking the beast was something you could hunt and kill," said the head. For a moment or two the forest and all the other dimly appreciated places echoed with the parody of laughter. "You knew, didn't you? I'm part of you. Close, close, close. I'm the reason why it's no go." why things are what they are. The laughter shivered again. Come now, said the Lord of the Flies. Get back to the others, and we'll forget the whole thing. Simon's head wobbled. His eyes were half closed, as though he were imitating the obscene thing on the stick. He knew that one of his times was coming on. The Lord of the Flies was expanding like a balloon. This is ridiculous. You know perfectly well you'll only meet me down there, so don't try to escape. Simon's body was arched and stiff. The Lord of the Flies spoke in the voice of a schoolmaster. This has gone quite far enough, my poor misguided child. Do you think you know better than I do? There was a pause. I'm warning you. I'm going to get angry. Do you see? You're not wanted. Understand? We are going to have fun on this island. Understand? We are going to have fun on this island. So don't try it on, my poor misguided boy, or else. Simon found he was looking into a vast mouth. There was blackness within, a blackness that spread. Or else, said the Lord of the Flies, we shall do you. See, Jack and Roger and Maurice and Robert and Bill and Piggy and Ralph. Do you see? Simon was inside the mouth. He fell down and lost consciousness. Chapter 9. A View to the Death. Over the island, the build-up of clouds continued. A steady current of heated air rose all day from the mountain and was thrust to 10,000 feet. Revolving masses of gas piled up the static until the air was ready to explode. By early evening the sun had gone, and a brassy glare had taken the place of clear daylight. Even the air that pushed in from the sea was hot and held no refreshment. Colors drained from water and trees and pink and hot surfaces of rock, and the white and brown clouds brooded. Nothing prospered but the flies who blackened their lord, and made the split guts look like a heap of glistening coal. Even when the vessel broke in Simon's nose, and the blood gushed out, they left him alone, preferring the pig's high flavor. With the running of the blood, Simon's fit passed into the weariness of sleep. He lay in the mat of creepers, while the evening advanced and the cannon continued to play, which was the thunder. At last he woke and saw dimly the dark earth close by his cheek. Still he did not move, but lay there, his face sideways on the earth, his eyes looking dully before him. Then he turned over, drew his feet under him, and laid hold of the creepers to pull himself up. When the creepers shook, the flies exploded from the guts with a vicious note and clamped back on again. Simon got to his feet. The light was unearthly. The Lord of the Flies hung on his stick like a black ball. Simon spoke aloud to the clearing. What else is there to do? Nothing, replied. Simon turned away from the open space and crawled through the creepers till he was in the dusk of the forest. He walked drearily between the trunks, his face empty of expression, and the blood was dry around his mouth and chin. Only sometimes, as he lifted the ropes of creeper aside and chose his direction from the trend of the land, he mouthed words that did not reach the air. Presently the creepers festooned the trees less frequently, and there was a scatter of pearly light from the sky down through the trees. This was the backbone of the island, the slightly higher land that lay beneath the mountain where the forest was no longer deep jungle. Here there were wide spaces interspersed with thickets and huge trees, and the trend of the ground led him up as the forest opened. He pushed on, staggering sometimes with his weariness, but never stopping. The usual brightness was gone from his eyes, and he walked with a sort of glum determination, like an old man. A buffet of wind made him stagger, and he saw that he was out in the open, on rock, under a brassy sky. He found his legs were weak, and his tongue gave him pain all the time. When the wind reached the mountain top, he could see something happen, a flicker of blue tuff against brown clouds. He pushed himself forward, and the wind came again, stronger now, cuffing the forest heads till they ducked and roared. Simon saw a humped thing suddenly sit up on the top, and looked down at him. He hid his face and toiled on. The flies had found the figure too. The lifelike movement would scare them off for a moment, so that they made a dark cloud round the head. Then, as the blue material of the parachute collapsed, and the corpulent figure would bow forward, sighing, and the flies settled once more. Simon felt his knees smack the rock. He crawled forward, and soon he understood. The tangle of lines showed him the mechanics of this parody. He examined the white nasal bones, the teeth, the colors of corruption. He saw how pitilessly the layers of rubber and canvas held together the poor body that should be rotting away. Then The wind blew again, and the figure lifted, bowed, and breathed foully at him. Simon knelt on all fours, and was sick till his stomach was empty. Then he took the lines in his hands. He freed them from the rocks, and the figure from the wind's indignity. At last he turned away and looked down at the beaches. The fire by the platform appeared to be out, or at least making no smoke. Further along the beach, beyond the little river and near a great slab of rock, a thin trickle of smoke was climbing into the sky. Simon, forgetful of the flies, shaded his eyes with both hands and peered at the smoke. Even at that distance it was possible to see that most of the boys, perhaps all the boys, were there. So they had shifted camp then, away from the beast. As Simon thought this, he turned to the poor broken thing that sat stinking by his side. The beast was harmless and horrible, and the news must reach the others as soon as possible. This beast, by the way, was this parachuter that had come in the middle of the night, and is dead, and they assumed that it was the beast earlier when they were looking for the beast, when they saw that mound of a figure. It was this parachuter who was dead, and the wind was blowing the parachute and the body around, making noise, yada yada yada. That's what the boys thought was originally the beast. Not the beast, just a dead parachuter. The beast was harmless and horrible, and the news must reach the others as soon as possible. He started down the mountain, and his legs gave beneath him. Even with great care, the best he could do was a stagger. Bathing, said Ralph. That's the only thing to do. Piggy was inspecting the looming sky through his glass. I don't like them clouds. Remember how it rained just after we landed? Going to rain again. Ralph dived into the pool. A couple of little ones were playing at the edge, trying to extract comfort from a wetness warmer than blood. Piggy took off his glasses, stepping primly into the water, and then put them on again. Ralph came to the surface and squirted a jet of water at him. Mind my specs, said Piggy. If I get water on the glass, I got to get out and clean 'em. Ralph squirted again and missed. He laughed at Piggy, expecting him to retire meekly as usual and in pained silence. Instead, Piggy beat the water with his hands. Stop it, he shouted. Did you hear? Fiercely, he drove the water into Ralph's face. All right, said Ralph. Keep your hair on. Piggy stopped beating the water. I got a pain in my head. I wish the air was cooler. I wish the rain would come. I wish we could go home. Piggy lay back against the sloping sand side of the pool. His stomach protruded and the water dried on it. Ralph squinted up at the sky. One could guess at the moment of the sun by the progress of light patch among the clouds. He knelt in the water and looked round. Where's everybody? Piggy sat up. Perhaps they're lying in the shelter. Where's Sam and Eric and Bill? Piggy pointed beyond the platform. That's where they've gone. Jack's party. Let them go, said Ralph uneasily. I don't care. Just for the meat. And for hunting, said Ralph wisely, and for pretending to be a tribe and putting on war paint. Piggy stirred the sand under water and did not look at Ralph. Perhaps we ought to go too. Ralph looked at him quickly, and Piggy blushed. I mean to make sure nothing happens. Ralph squirted water again. Long before Ralph and Piggy came up with Jack's lot, they could hear the party. There was a stretch of grass in a place where the palms left a wide band of turf between the forest and the shore. Just one step down from the edge of the turf was the white, blown sand of high water, warm, dry, trodden. Below that again was a rock that stretched away toward the lagoon. Beyond was a short stretch of sand, and then the edge of water. A fire burned on the rock, and fat dripped from the roasting pig meat into invisible flames. All the boys of the island, except Piggy, Ralph, and Simon, and the two tending the pig, were grouped on turf. They were laughing, singing, lying, squatting, or standing on the grass, holding food in their hands, but to judge by the greasy faces, the meat-eating was almost done, and some held coconut shells in their hands, and were drinking from them. Before the party had started, a great log had been dragged into the center of the lawn, and Jack, painted and garlanded, sat there like an idol. There were piles of meat on green leaves near him, and fruit and coconut shells full of drink. Piggy and Ralph came to the edge of the grassy platform, and the boys, as they noticed them, fell silent one by one, till only the boy next to Jack was talking. Then the silence intruded even there, and Jack turned where he sat. For a time he looked at them, and the crackle of the fire was the loudest noise over the droning of the reef. Ralph looked away, and Sam, thinking that Ralph had turned to him accusingly, put down his gnawed bone with a nervous giggle. Ralph took an uncertain step, pointed to a palm tree, and whispered something inaudible to Piggy, and they both giggled like Sam, lifting his feet high out of the sand, and Ralph started to stroll past. Piggy tried to whistle. At this moment the boys who were cooking at the fire suddenly hauled off a great chunk of meat and ran with it toward the grass. They bumped Piggy, who was burnt, and yelled and danced. Immediately Ralph and the crowd of boys were united and relieved by a storm of laughter. Piggy once more was the center of social derision, so that everyone felt cheerful and normal. Jack stood up and waved his spear. Take them some meat. The boys with the spit gave Ralph and Piggy each a succulent chunk. They took the gift, dribbling, so they stood and ate beneath the sky of thunderous brass that rang with the storm coming. Jack waved his spear again. Has everybody eaten as much as they want? There was still food left, sizzling on the wooden pits, heaped on green platters. Betrayed by his stomach, Piggy threw a picked bone down on the beach and stooped for more. Jack spoke again impatiently. Has everyone eaten as much as they want? His tone conveyed a warning, giving out of the pride of ownership, and the boys ate faster while there was still time, seeing there was no immediate likelihood of a pause. Jack rose from the log that was his throne and sauntered to the edge of the grass. He looked down from his paint at Ralph and Piggy. They moved a little farther off over the sand, and Ralph watched the fire as he ate. He noticed, without understanding, how the flames were visible now against the dull light. Evening was coming, not with calm beauty, but with the threat of violence. Jack spoke. Give me a drink. Henry brought him a shell, and he drank, watching Piggy and Ralph over the jagged rim. Power lay in the brown swell of his forearms. Authority sat on his shoulder and chattered in his ear like an ape. All sit down. The boys ranged themselves in rows on the grass before him, but Ralph and Piggy stayed a foot lower, standing on the soft sand. Jack ignored them for a moment, turned his mask down to the seated boys, and pointed at them with a spear. Who's going to join my tribe? Ralph made a sudden movement that became a stumble. Some of the boys turned toward him. I gave you food, said Jack, and my hunters will protect you from the beast. Who will join my tribe? I'm chief, said Ralph, because you chose me, and we were going to keep the fire going. Now you run after food. You ran yourself, shouted Jack. Look at that bone in your hands. Ralph went crimson. I said you were hunters. That was your job. Jack ignored him again. Who'll join my tribe and have fun? I'm chief, said Ralph tremulously. And what about the fire? And I've got the conch. You haven't got it with you, said Jack, sneering. You left it behind. See? Clever. And the conch doesn't count at this end of the island. All at once the thunder struck. Instead of the dull boom, there was a point of impact in the explosion. The conch counts here, too, said Ralph, and all over the island. What are you going to do about it, then? Ralph examined the ranks of boys. There was no help in them, and he looked away, confused and sweating. Piggy whispered, The fire. Rescue. Who will join my tribe? I will. Me. I will. I'll blow the conch, said Ralph breathlessly, and call an assembly. We shan't hear it. Piggy touched Ralph's wrist. Come away. There's going to be trouble, and we've had our meat. There was a blink of bright light beyond the forest, and the thunder exploded again, so that a little one started to whine. Big drops of rain fell among them, making individual sounds when they struck. Going to be a storm, said Ralph, and you'll have rain like when we dropped here. Who's clever now? Where are your shelters? What are you going to do about that? The hunters were looking uneasily at the sky, flinching from the stroke of the drops. A wave of restlessness set the boys swaying and moving aimlessly. The flickering light became brighter, and the blows of thunder were only just bearable. The little ones began to run about, screaming. Jack leapt out onto the sand. Do your dance. Come on, dance. He ran stumbling through the thick sand to the open space of rock beyond the fire. Between the flashes of lightning, the air was dark and terrible, and the boys followed him clamorously. Roger became the pig, grunting and charging at Jack, who sidestepped. The hunters took their spears, the cooks took spits, and the rest clubs of firewood. A circling movement developed in a chant. While Roger mimed the terror of the pig, the little ones ran and jumped on the outside of the circle. Piggy and Ralph, under the threat of the sky, found themselves eager to take place in this demented but partly secure society. They were glad to touch the brown backs of the fence that hemmed in the tear and made it governable. Kill the beast, cut its throat, spill its blood. The movement became regular while the chant lost its first superficial excitement and began to beat like a steady pulse. Roger ceased to be The movement became regular while the chant lost its first superficial excitement and began to beat like a steady pulse. Roger ceased to be a pig and became a hunter, so that the center of the ring yawned emptily. Some of the little ones started a ring on their own, and the contemporary circles went round and round as though repetition would achieve safety of itself. There was the throb and the stamp of a single organism. The dark sky was shadowed by a blue-white scar. An instant later the noise was on them like the blow of a gigantic whip. The chant rose a tone in agony. Kill the beast, cut his throat, spill his blood. Now out of the terror rose another desire, thick, urgent, blind. Kill the beast, cut his throat, spill his blood. Again the blue-white scar jagged above them, and the Sulphurous explosion beat down. The little ones screamed and blundered about, fleeing from the edge of the forest, and one of them broke the ring of Biggins in his terror. Him! Him! The circle became a horseshoe. A thing was crawling out of the forest. It came darkly, uncertainly. The shrill screaming that rose before the beast was like a pain. The beast stumbled into the horseshoe. Kill the beast, cut his throat, spill his blood. The blue-white scar was constant, the noise unendurable. Simon was crying out something about a dead man on a hill. Simon was the thing that crawled out of the jungle. Kill the beast, cut his throat, spill his blood, do him in. The sticks fell, and the mouth of the new circle crunched and screamed. The beast was on its knees in the center, its arms folded over its face. The boys are acting like Simon's the beast. It was crying out against the abominable noise, something about a body on the hill. The beast struggled forward, broke the ring, and fell over the steep edge of the rock to the sand by the water. At once the crowd surged after it, poured down the rock, leapt on to the beast, screamed, struck, bit, tore. There were no words and no movements, but the tearing of teeth and claws. Then the clouds opened and let down the rain like a waterfall. The water bounded from the mountain tops, tore leaves and branches from the trees, poured like a cold shower over the struggling heap on the sand. Presently the heap broke up and figures staggered away. Only the beast lay still, a few yards from the sea. But it wasn't the beast. It was Simon. Even in the rain, they could see how small a beast it was, and already its blood was staining the sand. Now a great wind blew the rain sideways, cascading the water from the forest trees. On the mountain top the parachute filled and moved. The figure slid, rose to its feet, spun, swayed down through a vastness of wet air, and trod with ungainly feet the tops of the high trees. Falling, still falling, it sank toward the beach, and the boys rushed screaming into the darkness. The parachute took the figure forward, furrowing the lagoon, and bumped it over the reef and out to sea. Toward midnight the rain ceased and the clouds drifted away, so that the sky was scattered once more with the incredible lamps of stars. Then the breeze died too, and there was no noise save the drip and trickle of water that ran out of the clefts and spilled down, leaf by leaf, to the brown earth of the island. The air was cool, moist, and clear, and presently even the sound of water was still. The beast lay huddled on the pale beach, and the stains spread inch by inch. The edge of the lagoon became a streak of phosphorescence, which advanced minutely as a great wave of the tide flowed. The clear water mirrored the clear sky and the angular, bright constellations. The line of phosphorescence bulged about the sand grains and little pebbles. It held them each in a dimple of tension, then suddenly accepted them with an inaudible syllable and moved on. Along the shoreward edge of the shallows, and the advancing clearness was full of strange, moonbeam-bodied creatures with fiery eyes. Here and there a larger pebble clung to its own air, and was covered with a coat of pearls. The tide swelled in over the rain-pitted sand, and smoothed everything with a layer of silver. Now it touched the first of the stains that seeped from the broken body, and the creatures made a moving patch of light as they gathered at the edge. The water rose farther, and dressed Simon's coarse hair with brightness. The line of his cheek silvered, and the turn of his shoulder became sculpture marble. The strange attendant creatures, with their fiery eyes and trailing vapors, busied themselves round his head. The body lifted a fraction of an inch from the sand, and a bubble of air escaped from the mouth with a wet plop. Then it turned gently in the water. Somewhere over the darkened curve of the world the sun and moon were pulling, and the film of water on the earth planet was held, bulging slightly on one side, while the solid core turned. The great wave of the tide moved farther along the island, and the water lifted. Softly, surrounded by a fringe of inquisitive bright creatures, itself a silver shape beneath the steadfast constellations, Simon's dead body moved out toward the open sea. Chapter 10. The Shell and the Glasses. Piggy eyed the advancing figure carefully. Nowadays he sometimes found that he saw more clearly if he removed his glasses and shifted one lens to the other eye. But even through the good eye, after what had happened, Ralph remained unmistakably Ralph. He came now out of the coconut trees, limping, dirty with dead leaves hanging from his shock of yellow hair. One eye was a slit in his puffy cheek, and a great scab had formed on his right knee. He paused for a moment and peered at the figure on the platform. "Piggy, are you the only one left?" "There's some little ones." They don't count. No biggins? Oh, Sam and Eric, they're collecting wood. Nobody else? Not that I know of. Ralph climbed on the platform carefully. The coarse grass was still worn away, where the assembly used to sit. The fragile white conch still gleamed by the polished seat. Ralph sat down in the grass facing the chief's seat and the conch. Piggy knelt at his left, and for a long time there was silence. At last Ralph cleared his throat and whispered something. Piggy whispered back. What you say? Ralph spoke up. Simon. Piggy said nothing but nodded solemnly. They continued to sit, gazing with impaired sight at the chief's seat and the glittering lagoon. The green light and the glossy patches of sunshine played over their befouled bodies. At length Ralph got up and went to the conch. He took the shell caressingly with both hands and knelt, leaning against the trunk. Piggy. What are we going to do? Piggy nodded at the conch. You could call an assembly? Ralph laughed sharply as he said the word, and Piggy frowned. You're still chief. Ralph laughed again. You are. Over us. I got the conch. Ralph, stop laughing like that. Look, there ain't no need, Ralph. What's the others going to think? At last Ralph stopped. He was shivering. Piggy. That was Simon. You said that before. Piggy. That was murder. You stop it, said Piggy shrilly. What good you're going to do talking like that? He jumped to his feet and stood over Ralph. It was dark. There was that bloody dance. There was lightning and thunder and rain. We was scared. I wasn't scared, said Ralph slowly. I don't know what I was. We was scared, said Piggy excitedly. Anything might have happened. It wasn't what you said. He was gesticulating, searching for a formula. Oh, Piggy. Ralph's voice, low and stricken, stopped Piggy's gestures. He bent down and waited. Ralph, cradling the conch, rocked himself to and fro. Don't you understand, Piggy? The things we did? He may still be... No. Perhaps he was only pretending. Piggy's voice trailed off at the sight of Ralph's face. You were outside the circle. You never really came in. Didn't you see what they did? There was loathing, and at the same time a kind of feverish excitement in his voice. Didn't you see, Piggy? Not all that well. I only got one eye now. You ought to know that, Ralph. Ralph continued to rock to and fro. It was an accident, said Piggy suddenly. That's what it was, an accident. His voice shrilled again. Coming in the dark, he hadn't no business crawling like that out of the dark. He was batty. He asked for it. It was an accident. You didn't see what they did. Look, Ralph, we got to forget this. We can't do no good thinking about it, see? I'm frightened. Of us. I want to go home. Oh, God, I want to go home. It was an accident, said Piggy stubbornly, and that's that. He touched Ralph's bare shoulder, and Ralph shuddered at the human contact. And look, Ralph. Piggy glanced round quickly, then leaned close. Don't let on we was in that dance. Not to Sam and Eric. But we were, all of us. Piggy shook his head. Not us till last. They never noticed in the dark. Anyway, you said I was only on the outside. So was I, muttered Ralph. I was on the outside, too. Piggy nodded eagerly. That's right, we was on the outside. We never done nothing. We never seen nothing. Piggy paused, then went on. We'll live on our own, the four of us. 4 of us. We aren't enough to keep the fire burning. We'll try. See, I lit it. Sam and Eric came dragging a great log out of the forest. They dumped it by the fire and turned to the pool. Ralph jumped to his feet. Hi, you two. The twins checked a moment, then walked on. They're going to bathe, Ralph. Better get it over. The twins were very surprised to see Ralph. They flushed and looked past him into the air. Hello, fancy meeting you, Ralph. We just been in the forest to get wood for the fire. We got lost last night. Ralph examined his toes. You got lost after the... Piggy cleaned his lens. After the feast, said Sam in a stifled voice. Eric nodded. Yes, after the feast. We left early, said Piggy quickly, because we were tired. So did we, very early. We were very tired. Sam touched a scratch on his forehead and then hurriedly took his hand away. Eric fingered his split lip. Yes, we were very tired, repeated Sam. So we left early. Was it a good... The air was heavy, with unspoken knowledge. Sam twisted, and the obscene word shot out of him. Dance? Memory of the dance that none of them had attended shook all 4 boys convulsively. We left early.